For me, sustainability, it's something that every kind of business should improve because it's a benefit for the business in general, and it's not a cost. It's not have to be a cost. From my point of view, if you start to show how GreenOps, for example, could reduce costs, you win.
Hello, and welcome to Environment Variables, brought to you by the Green Software Foundation. In each episode, we discuss the latest news and events surrounding green software. On our show, you can expect candid conversations with top experts in their field who have a passion for how to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions of software. I'm your host, Chris Adams.
Hello and welcome to The Week in Green Software, the podcast from the Green Software Foundation, where we look at the latest news from the world of green software. I am your host this week, Anna Currie, and today we'll be looking at sustainability from a human and organizational perspective, how culture, design, and leadership shape the systems we build. And joining me is Anna Forlati, a UX designer and sustainability advocate who spent her career helping organizations embed purpose and environmental responsibility into their culture. Now, it's interesting because Anna and I have never met before. So, Anna, would you like to introduce yourself to everybody, including me?
Yeah, thank you, Annie. Hi, hello, everyone. I'm Anna Forlati. I'm head of digital sustainability and impact at Team System, which is a tech company based in Italy. And I'm truly honored to be part of this podcast. I also support the Sustainable IT Netherlands community, and I'm about to launch a new project focused on UX and sustainability here in Amsterdam.
Fantastic. Welcome to the podcast. So for people who aren't regular listeners, my name is Anna Currie. I am one of the co-authors of O'Reilly's new book, Building Green Software, which everybody knows I say every week. If you're listening to this, you'll enjoy building green software. And if you haven't read it, or if you can't afford to pay for a book, an O'Reilly version of it, there is a free Creative Commons version of it on my website. I'm also the CEO of the training and consultancy company, Strategically Green. And if you go to strategically.green, you'll find a full copy of the book, just the text, under a Creative Commons license there, so you can read it for free. And oddly enough, the fact that it doesn't have any of the fancy pictures, it doesn't have the fancy book, but it has the text in it. And the text is the core of the important part of the book. It's 99.9% of the value. And that is very relevant to what we're going to be talking about today, is that when you're providing a service, what's actually important, that the value in that service, and how do you make that value available to absolutely everybody? So, Anna, do you want to talk to us a little bit about your role in UX design and maximizing value for everyone out of products?
Yeah, maybe I could share how I become a sustainability advocate from a UX designer point of view. Because I was a UX designer because I wanted to improve people's lives in the way they interact with technology, a website or an app or any kind of digital interfaces. But at some point, I realized that helping people navigate interfaces more easily wasn't enough. And I still remember that moment. And I knew I could do more. So my goal evolved into something broader. And I think maybe definitely more complex. And that's why that's happened when I decided to join a B Corp, a company committed to using business as a force for good. And while continuing to lead design teams and work on user-centered innovation, I also took on the company B Corp certification process. And that experience was quite transformative for me because it gave me a real and practical understanding of what it means to build responsible and sustainable businesses. And then, an interesting opportunity arrived and I was invited to join a newly formed ESG and impact team. And so today I work closely with the Chief Sustainability Officer, and I have a particular focus, of course, on digital products. So I'm trying to exploring how we can make digital product more ethical, inclusive, and of course, environmentally conscious. And so this is basically my journey and why I moved from UX to a more sustainable like type of job.
That's very interesting. So can you tell us what is a B Corp? Why is a B Corp different from a normal corporation?
Yeah, a B Corp basically is a company that wants to do something that goes beyond business. So a B Corp is a company that aims to generate a positive impact on society, but also on the environment. And it's interesting because if you want to become a B Corp, you have to follow this process of certification. So you have to demonstrate what are your goals and how you want to support your communities or how you want to help help the planet in some ways. So it's not easy to become a B Corp. But if you want to become a B Corp, I think that you should have a clear purpose. And this purpose should, of course, include the environment and the society.
That's very interesting. So it's basically being good.
Indeed.
It's a company to do good, that you're kind of signaling to all the people in your company, all your employees, all your customers, all your investors, that your priority is to do good. So it's interesting. Is it an EU thing or is it an American thing? What is it?
I think it's a global thing. So yeah, it's not just an EU thing. And for me, now the evolution of the B Corp could be a company that wants to be compliant to the CSRD, for example, EU regulation here in EU, because I see this movement that, I don't know, it's like something that is super good based on good intention. But if you want to move from a B Corp to a company that, for example, want to respond to the CSRD compliances, so the company should have made the double materiality assessment or any other kind of reporting, like ESG reporting. It's like a stronger commitment for the company.
Yeah.
Because this kind of company has to report not only because of the compliance, but also because they have some data to show to this into this reporting regulation. So I think that now, for me, a company that is a B Corp is a super good company, of course, because it's a company that wants to do something good for the world. But I think that in Europe now we have some new instrument to be more practical, to be more focused on the output that we want to aim. So I don't know. I see B Corp and this other kind of company that wants to produce like this ESG reporting as a journey. So maybe you first become a B Corp and then maybe you can start to understand better how you can move to a more practical, to a more measuring focus kind of impact.
That makes sense. So becoming a B Corp is kind of like showing your aspiration. It's saying, look, this is the direction we're traveling in. It's kind of aligning all your folk, your employees and your employees' families and your employees' friends and everybody involved, saying this is where we're going. And then you can actually do more down the road from that. So it makes it easier to do more practical things because it's clear that everybody's signed up and doing, and everybody knows what's expected of them, where you go. So it's interesting. So where you said you've done a B Corp transformation, was that for an existing company that was not a B Corp to become a B Corp? Or is it something that's more like this is the first thing you do? It's right at the start.
No, the company was a B Corp already, and helped the company to recertificate, so to obtain the certification again. And and however, it's not an easy process because you have to collect data, you have to collect documents, and you have to show your intention. The company was already a B Corp. So for me, it was easy to understand the process because my colleagues has already done this before. So for me, instead, was the first time. And so I discovered that a company could also have a good intention, not only for from the financial point of view. So for me, it was, wow, interesting. Yeah.
That is really interesting. So towards the end of this, I know we're going to talk a little bit about organizational culture and how you transform organizational culture, which is obviously related to this B Corp side of things. But before we do that, we're going to talk a little bit about UX and your UX background and how that overlaps with both sustainability and also other B Corp desires like accessibility. So the first regular listeners to this podcast will know we hardly ever get to actually read any of the things that we were supposed to be reading and discussing in this week in software. So we've got 3 articles that we're supposed to be discussing, but I think this week we're gonna get really ahead of ourselves by actually at least starting to discuss one of them. And the first one is very interesting. One of the reasons why we never get very far is because we get so caught up in discussing what we're reading. The first one is an article from, just let me look up the name of this company, Tetralogical, and it's entitled "Why Inclusive Products Are Green Products." And this is a very interesting. I love this topic, so this is why we're probably never going to get beyond this article. It's basically saying, to be honest, it's probably summarized basically by the title, which is why green products are, why good products are often green. Sustainability and all the other good things around UX design are highly linked. Now, we had an interesting article. We had a chapter entirely about why being good and being professional and doing a good job and green are extremely well aligned. Why green is actually a growth strategy, not a degrowth strategy. Mm-hmm. So this is, as I say, very close to my heart. So Anna, did you take a look at that? So how did that article relate to what you learned on the job doing this yourself?
Yeah, well, when I read this article, the first thought that comes in my mind was, of course, because every impact is interconnected and interdependent. So every action we take has a direct impact and many indirect impact that we often ignore. But I think the same is true in design. So if we adapt like a more systemic approach, we can see that something that could have an environmental impact, of course, will have some social impact, because environmental impact and social impact are deeply interconnected in the world around us in general, so in design as well. And I think that designer should start to notice it, because sometimes I see that the designers community in general are focused on ethical design, the inclusive design. But if you choose to take action in this direction, of course, you also have some impact on environment. And I remember I read another studies which states that the 80% of a product's environmental impact are influenced by the design phase. And I think that this statistic alone reveals just how much influence designers could have on a product, on a user experience. not only from the accessibility, inclusion point of view, but also on the sustainability and long-term footprint of the digital products in general. And so, yeah, I think that in this kind of approach, designers could be not only creative people, but they are also like cultural neighbors, because I remember I work with a lot of product team that didn't know what UX was. It was a lot of years ago. But in that role, I remember I spent half of my time designing the interfaces and the other half creating a culture of design within the team. And so I think that today we are facing like a similar turning point with sustainable and inclusive design. So designers have to lead again this like cultural transformation, bringing new perspective into the conversation, and designers can guide teams toward more conscious in general product. And for me, a more conscious product is conscious from environmental and social point of view. Like it's like, of course, and, yeah.
I like your positioning of, yeah, of course it is, and you're right, of course it is. And well, I'm not a designer, but I have worked in producing products for many years, many decades. And something that struck me throughout my entire career, and we covered it a lot in Building Green Software, is the most important thing, if you're an engineer, and I suspect it's true of you for a designer as well, is understanding what is it that your product does, what's important. What is the most important thing that your product does for your customers? And then prioritizing that. I mean, it seems like but as you say, when you said, of course, it's like, of course. It's of course the most important thing the designer does is understand what their product does for their customers and make sure that it does that in all circumstances for all of their customers. The bells and whistles don't matter so much. They're bells and whistles. They're nice to have. So they're 10% of the value of the product, but the 90% of the value of the products, that's what you need everybody to have. And oddly enough, the surprising thing is that the 90% is often quite easy to deliver. It's the bells and whistles that are hard, expensive, use a lot of resources, bandwidth intensive. The bit that's absolutely the core of your product is often quite tiny and quite cheap to deliver and quite deliverable. A badly designed product, in my mind, is often one which has its eyes entirely on the bells and whistles and not on delivering the basic thing that product does reliably to every single user in every single environment. I don't know. What do you think of that? That's a strange way of phrasing it, but I can see you nodding, so I think you might agree.
Indeed. For me, a more sustainable product is also a more resilient product, more adaptable to future change, more valuable as well in general. And I think that designer has like tools like speculative design, or there are many tools from sustainable UX like non-human personas, for example, that could help us to anticipate the impact of our digital system on the world. And so that help us to make this product more resilient and like future-proof. So for me, I completely agree. And I wish my dream is that one day we will see like a Sustainability Act for digital products, just like now we have an Accessibility Act. So for me, it's like we have to preparing for the future.
Yes. Yeah, no, I agree. And yes, I have, I've read read various accessibility acts and worked with various accessibility acts, and they were very, very effective. Interestingly, in the early days, 3 decades ago, when we first started looking at building accessibility into products, it was the carrot and the stick that really helped us get there. It wasn't really about doing good. Back then, we didn't really know anything about doing good. We just did what we were told to do. But with accessibility, I think probably the most effective thing, well, two very effective things. One was Google saying that you were going to move up the search rankings if your site was accessible, and move down its carrot and stick if it wasn't. That made a huge difference to website designers. But also the US government saying that they were only going to buy products that met the accessibility standards. That made a huge difference as well, because you had no business if your product didn't, and you were selling to the US government, who had the most money, let's face it. If they weren't accessible, you didn't get to do that. So there was that carrot and stick of, unfortunately, I can't see the US government doing that these days, but the EU is kind of stepping into that role of saying, look, all our money is only available to you if you do well on sustainability. Mm-hmm. Oddly enough, Google's accessibility guidelines for how sites are ranked are not that dissimilar to the kind of things you would do for a sustainable website as well. And that all comes down to, I would say, going back to basics, which is, what is it that's really important on your website? Mm-hmm. Which, as you say, is the text, the content, the content. Mm-hmm. And that's quite small. Text is tiny. It really isn't that difficult to deliver it. I love text. I'm a writer. I love text.
Indeed. And I think also that if we think about inclusion, like in a broader way, because we don't just have to consider human diversity in terms of ability, gender, geography, but if we start to design with empathy for entire ecosystem, we have to include like plants, trees, the soil, the sun, and the animals. And so in this kind of way, we could say that we are, however, following the inclusive design guideline, because we are including all the different type of entities and not only human. And that's basically what Don Norman suggests us in his latest book. He talked about humanity-centered design, not human-centered design, because we have to think about the nature. We have to think about the whole of humanity, not only users. And so in that kind of way, we could say we are, however, now building a more inclusive software or product, because we are including all kind of entity.
Yeah, and it is a really interesting one. The reason why we're talking about this, it comes down to a concept that has threaded the entirety of the history of the tech industry, which is getting the value from the product to the customer. Mm-hmm. And when we talk about websites, or when we're talking about video calls or podcasts, it's about getting the content to the user, and thinking about, well, what is the content that we really matter about, and how might it be difficult to get it to the user? And lots of it is about transmitting that content on wires. So if the content is huge, but quite wasteful, isn't really using that hugeness to deliver an awful lot of value to users, then it cuts out a lot of potential customers who are on slower bandwidth connections, or maybe in countries where the bandwidth isn't so high, like sub-Saharan Africa. And it doesn't need to, because the actual content, the valuable content, could be squeezed down to quite a tiny part and transmitted to those folks. So designers who design with that in mind say, well, what's the fallback option? What is my value, and how can I transmit it to everybody quite minimally, in a very which is more sustainable, it's more resilient, it's more accessible? Those are good designers. Those are actually designers who are focused on purpose of their products and the end users of their product. I always think about in the early days, we used to this is, everybody will be sick to death of this example because I give it all the time, which is video conferencing. I used to be working video conferencing back in the day. So video conferencing is a huge amounts of information to pass the video, and a tiny amounts of data to pass the audio. But actually, as we all know from listening to podcasts, the important part is the audio. So a good audio-video product, so the users, and this is something that the designers decided right at the start. They said, our priority is the audio, and it's tiny, and we'll say that always goes. The video, if it drops off, if we lose it, if it freezes, it's a nice to have. It's the bells and whistles. We'll prioritize the audio so that everybody gets the audio, even if they're in sub-Saharan Africa. And, we will know that the video is the nice to have. That kind of thinking is at the heart, I would say, of sustainable UX development, knowing what's important. What do you think? What's your thinking on that?
Yeah, indeed. I think that, it's always, when we talk in general about sustainability, in my opinion, it's always a trade-off, because we know the most sustainable way to do everything is do nothing. So we have to do something, no? So for me, you as designer, if you design product with this systemic thinking and systemic approach, you are more it's easier for you to choose what are the priorities. So if you have a clear purpose, if your product have a clear purpose, you can then say, okay, this is important, so we have to be able to give this to our users. But if we give this, maybe with as you mentioned before, maybe without the video, the user will be happy in the same way, and maybe you are doing something good for the environment. So I think that designer can support this kind of conversation inside the product team. And so this kind of conversation, for me, it's like a mindset shift, because we are helping the product team to just think about not only the direct impact on the users, but also the impact on, as I mentioned before, the other kind of entity. And so we are able to make more responsible choices, because however we have to make choices. And so that's why I think it's like more a mindset shift, because if we want to deliver value, we have to choose, and we have always to, in my opinion, have a clear purpose, and all the team have to share this purpose.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because it doesn't mean giving things up, and that it doesn't mean giving up the bells and whistles. So in the video conferencing, I'm not suggesting for one moment that everybody gives up video conferencing and just has phone calls. It's like video does add value, and it is good. I love to see you. I like to watch your videos and see everybody and see what they're thinking and see some of their body movements and all that kind of stuff. It's all good. It's just about saying, well, if I had to give up something because there were issues with bandwidth connectivity, or because I didn't have the money to run this, or it was a very dirty area, or there was no green electricity to provide my system. If I had to turn off some features, which were the most important features to keep, and which are features that I could turn off, so that you could prioritize? I would say it's in some ways a version of the lean concept. So the lean concept is about removing waste, and that's kind of the extreme end of this. It's saying, video, we don't need it; it's wasteful. I'm not saying video is wasteful, but what I am saying is but I'm not saying it's waste, but I'm saying it's lower value. So if you had to, that's where you should be thinking about, for the next half hour, I think I'm gonna just dial down the quality of that video a little bit, have people be a little bit more blocky, because that's not as valuable to me. But I want to keep everybody sounding super crisp.
Yeah, indeed. And I think about like some feature I saw, especially on website. Some website had like a sustainable mode, which basically is no image, no video, dark mode, and the other usually like good pattern that we use in sustainable design. And so maybe if I think that if a team can't really prioritize, maybe we can also give the users the power to choose. So give the user the power to say, okay, today I want to see the video, but maybe the day after the video is not so important, so I can turn off the video. And so this could be like another option for designers, in my opinion, because however, users have to feel free to choose in general. This is a basic UX guidelines. So maybe we could also apply this freedom to choose also in the sustainability part. So it could be an approach.
It's an interesting one. I like that because it forces it shows the designer is thinking about options. They're going, oh, well, actually, this is less important, so we could potentially give them the option to turn that off. This is more important, so we probably shouldn't give them the option to turn it off. So I like all of that. It makes you think, well, that's if the designer sits down and goes, this is a very expensive thing, do we definitely need to offer it all the time? That's a good thing. Mm-hmm. The thing I'm always a bit more dubious about giving, and also I think giving customers choice is a really good thing. The thing I'm always a bit more dubious about is, can those customers make an informed choice? Do you have more information than they do, or the system has more information than they do? Which means that they'll be making a choice, they'll be thinking it's great, but actually they're taking a hit without it really generating any value. So for example, in the middle of the night, there's loads of bandwidth. Maybe there's loads of green power from windmill, from air turbines, whatever. Mm-hmm. Customer just doesn't know that. They don't know what the situation is, so they don't know whether it's really important that they turn their video off, for example, and just listen, or it makes absolutely no difference whatsoever. So the downside, I really like everybody thinking about it. I really like people to offer choice, but they've got choice without necessarily having all the information required to actually make an informed choice. I mean, it might be incredibly important that they turn off the video, but they don't know. Or it may be incredibly, and they might be perfectly happy to turn off the video. And in fact, quite a lot of systems, the general in tech, the general thing that works is if a system will automatically notice that there's a really good reason to turn down the video, from high definition to standard definition or whatever right now, because there's a whole load of congestion. It'll just do it for you automatically. Mm-hmm. You couldn't leave that to the customer because they might forget, they might not know, they wouldn't be able to react fast enough. When it came to most video conferencing systems like this, well, actually Riverside, where we're recording this podcast, is pretty good because it does a whole load of stuff effectively or asynchronously on your local machine. So it can kind of like it's not reliant on what's going on the internet at the moment. But if I was on, for example, Zoom, that's a real-time call, Zoom would go, oh, goodness me, there's not an awful lot of bandwidth at the moment, but I really want to prioritize the audio. So I will automatically make the video a bit blocky. And that's the only way to make those systems work, because only software can react fast enough to adapt to the local conditions. So, so I totally agree with you. And I also have some issues.
Yeah, no, it's a good point, because I think that designers could help in this case as well, because if, for example, introduce some just small information inside the interfaces that just describe why there is this new feature, maybe users could start to understand. So we could help users to be more aware. And especially this part of the awareness part is what I'm now focusing in the product in my company, because I think is, however, also for the user is a journey, because if we just deliver a new feature is like, okay, but if you don't explain why, maybe the user will never use it, no?
Yeah.
And so it's a journey for the users as well. So we have to start with awareness, and then we have to give them the possibility to choose, as I mentioned before, and then maybe we will have the final like win-win, because we from our side try to take the right choice, so implement and develop software that are less like GHG emissions and the other stuff, but we can also help user to be more sustainable to behavior in a different way, because we explain them why it's important, and also we show them the impact of their action. And if we are now doing this two parts, so explain and show the numbers, show the impact, maybe we can really change the behavior of the users. So I think it's like more a journey than a new feature, and that's it.
That I completely agree with you. I think that everything we're doing, so it's why we wrote building green software. You have to explain to people, you have to give people the ideas, the underlying concepts, and let them make judgments and give them the power to make judgments based on those. Mm-hmm. Because what we were just talking about, I'm now going to contradict what I just said to you about where the information lies. Sometimes it lies with the company who's providing a service, but sometimes it resides entirely with the user. It depends. It varies massively. So, for example, I've got solar panels, and I know that, but the people who are providing me services don't know that. So I know, well, the sun's shining and I'm generating loads of power, so I'm going to doing it. Maybe I'm going to charge my car now because actually that's an amazing thing to do. Mm-hmm. It's an amazingly cheap thing to do. It's an amazingly green thing to do. It's great. My energy provider doesn't know I've got solar panels and that it's sunny right now. So generally speaking, they might have the information and more information than me. But in this situation, I, as a consumer, have more information than them. So we really need everybody to be educated. We need the customers to be educated so they can apply their information that they have as usefully as possible, as well as just relying on the automated systems from suppliers, from your service providers. Mm-hmm. It's nothing is ever easy, is it? It's always complicated.
We are talking about sustainability, so yeah, this is what it has to be. So, yeah. No, I know. But yeah, I think when we talk about this sustainability, I always want to underline another word, that is responsibility, because sustainability is complex. Everything is interconnected, and if you do something good, but there is also 100 of indirect impact that could be not so good. And so I think that if we are responsible of our choices, we are like more sustainable, because as I mentioned before, we always can be more sustainable. So if we are able to take responsible choices, we are moving to sustainability and to a sustainable life and sustainable digital ecosystem. So it's like, I don't know, sometimes when we talk about sustainability, we think that we have to be perfect. So, but that's impossible. No, come on. Everyone has like a guilty pleasure that is not sustainable. So we are not angel. So come on.
That's very true. That is extremely true. So one of the things that you want to, so we talked a little bit now, that's been a very interesting discussion about responsibility and information and education and agency. And, it's everybody has to do their bits. And sometimes you have, really the agency has to move to the information, and that can be on either side, that could be one side or the other. So you've said that you've spent a lot of your career, or a lot of your career has been you've been interested in increasing agency, organizational change, making cultural changes. How does that fit into this?
Yeah, I think I learn a lot because, I think that as a designer, I started this new job with a lot of good intention. But then I understand that I have to learn new languages. I have to be able to talk, for example, about risk mitigation, compliances, the CSRD, and these other boring stuff. But I have to know it because if I really want to change the culture of the company and the company in general, I have to understand the business. So I have to be able, for example, to collect data, to create a use case and to share it with the leadership and to share this story. And so I have to be able to collect measurement and also be aware of the ESG point of view of my solution. So I think that if we as designer close this gap between business and ESG and the other boring stuff, we will be really able to bring some changes into the company. And for me, it was super interesting because, I understand that even in this boring part, there will be a lot of creative aspect because I think that this new EU regulation really could help us to try to transform our product and could be really support for our choices, and also could be transformed into an opportunity to create a new product because we need it, because it's good for the company to be compliant to this kind of regulation, but it also is good for the planet and the society. So I think that if every designer maybe try to learn more about ESG in general, maybe we could be more efficient and try to, maybe change the companies and the world.
You're making a very interesting statement there. You're saying that actually one of the early things you learned was that you need to be able to persuade, you need to be able to influence. And see, the first step in persuading people is to convince them that your intentions, what you want and what they want, is essentially aligned. You're not acting against their best interests. You're saying this will help you get to where you want to be anyway, or where you could be, and it's just as good for you as where you're going at the moment. And a really good way of demonstrating that you understand where they're going, and that you're not trying to tell them to blow up their business, is to learn the language of their business and the language of success in their business, whether it's making money or being a B Corp or meeting regulations that they have to meet or managing risk or whatever. If you talk to them in the language that's aligned with what they want, they won't put up so many barriers against you. They'll see you as being on their side. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. No, I think that if you are able to link sustainability and profitability, resilience and growth, that is, I think, from my point of view, what ESG help us, all the ESG principle help us, you will be listened by the stakeholders. Because if you are able to show, for example, that a financial risk or that a company could face, it could be tightly bound to its sustainability practices, or you can show, you are able to show how the negative or positive impact could influence the business. So it could be an opportunity for improving reputation, for example, or for opening new markets or generating innovation. So I think that it's a win-win. So it could be a win for the business part and for the sustainability part. And I read a research, I remember, that shows that companies with strong ESG performance are more resilient, are more robust, reduce financial costs, and improve investment and operational efficiency. So for me, sustainability, it's something that every kind of business should improve, because it's a benefit for the business in general, and it's not a cost. It's not have to be a cost. So, and it's not just unethical choices. So I don't know. I just, for me, it's super clear. And sometimes I ask myself, but why it's not so clear for the other company? Why it's not so clear for, I don't know, other big company? Because from my point of view, if you start to show how GreenOps, for example, could reduce costs, you win. So and you don't have to do so much stuff to just show these numbers, and and so this could be an easy win-win. But then you can also work on the other part. For example, in AI as well, you can choose the small AI model, which is efficient, but also it costs less, so, and is more sustainable. So it's another win-win. So I don't know. From a certain point of view, I see some choices that are sustainable choices that could be super easy for the company. And maybe I wonder if we are sharing this topic in the wrong way, because maybe when we talk about sustainability, we talk about the perfect kind of company that should do this, and this, and this. And for me, I don't know, maybe storytelling is not supportive for the people that work on sustainability, because I think that if you want to change a company, you have to start small. And so you have to choose the right actions that maybe is a small action, but have a huge impact. And so with this small action, you can then tell a story, and then you can share this action to other colleagues that maybe add another action. And so you can create a group of people inside the company that are advisor of this sustainability action. And then you can grow, and the cultural part start to change. So I don't know. Sometimes I just wonder if we have to change the storytelling of the sustainability.
Oh, I completely and totally agree with you on that. I think that the storytelling has been terrible. And, and often, I mean, it sounds like with your company that everybody's quite well aware of what's going on board, and it's a B Corp and everything. But in a lot of other companies, there's still unfortunately, the community often, the green community often causes this problem by saying things like degrowth or doing nothing is the most sustainable option, or no AI. No, what? The only sustainable AI is no AI. And everybody goes, well, I want AI, so no. So I choose AI. If you make people choose between technology and growth and sustainability. They'll choose technology and growth. And they don't, and it's not a binary choice. There is no, it's like sustainability is just doing your job better. And it is pro-growth. Mm-hmm. The degrowthers could really have done more harm if they were actually paid for by the fossil fuel industries. I believe. So yeah, that, and we all have to be aware at all times that half of our movement is acting against the other half of our movement, or us, because we're really in the growth side of the movement, aren't we? Green Software Foundation is not about no software. We're not the campaign against software. We are the campaign for cheaper, more resilient software that is, as a result, more sustainable. We're about software growth, not about software degrowth. Yeah, you're right. It's hard.
It's hard. I know. Yeah.
But, so anyway, we've chatted for 50 minutes, and it's been an excellent chat. I've really enjoyed talking to you. So we're coming to the end of our time. Is there anything you want to say? Anything you haven't said yet? I know we haven't talked about half the things we're going to talk about. We're going to talk forever, but we've probably put enough thoughts into people's heads. And we've said the very controversial thing at the end about degrowth. So is there anything you want to add before we say goodbye?
Well, maybe I would like to share with you what is called cathedral thinking, because I think it's, it's a mindset that we should have in general, not only inside the company and to build a digital product, which basically is cathedral thinking means that people who build medieval cathedrals knew they would never see the final result in their lifetime, but they still worked with care and intention, knowing they were contributing to something that future generation would use and value. And I think that this should be our approach in our life in general, because I think that now we are so focused on the present, on the velocity, on the, make the things done. And instead, I think that this cathedral thinking is the core of the sustainable thinking, because if we start to think about future generation and the value we want to leave to this future generation, that's like our purpose, our guide. So something that could help us to take the right choices.
Well, that was an excellent way. Thank you very much. That's a great concept to end. So thank you very much. So all of the things that we've been talking about today, to our listeners, thank you very much for listening today. All the things we'll be talking about today will be in the show notes below this episode. And again, I very much enjoyed talking to you, Anna. Thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you, Annie. Thank you. It was a pleasure for me.
Goodbye, everybody. And I will speak to you within a couple of weeks, I suspect, on a future episode of Environment Variables podcast. Goodbye.
Bye.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening. Just a reminder to follow Environment Variables on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And please do leave a rating and review if you like what we're doing. It helps other people discover the show. And of course, we'd love to have more listeners. To find out more about the Green Software Foundation, please visit greensoftware.foundation. That's greensoftware.foundation in any browser. Thanks again, and see you in the next episode.